Thank you. Thank you for being up early in the morning, at least for me. This is, I think, the 6th year in a row that I've come to Toronto, and initially it was by the invitation of Elise for me to talk about aging and HIV. And in general, I've come to carry a new message or some new information that I hope will be imparted to you to give some guidance, if you will. I always think of U.S. or particularly New York City as being like a crystal ball of the future. If it happens in New York, it pretty much happens everywhere else eventually. Well, today I'm kind of in a weird position. The word rehabilitation is almost unknown in the dialogue in the U.S. Regards the epidemic. And in some respects, and not only some respects, yesterday's presentations, and I'm sure today's, are almost, for me, visionary and almost too good to be true. And I'll give you an indication why as I go over some of the points I want to make today. At our last meeting that I was here in Toronto, a research meeting, Lisa Power from the UK at the Terence Higgins Trust made the statement, HIV systematically disadvantages you across a lifetime. I'm sure that most people living with HIV, particularly older adults, would agree with that. On the other hand, there are positive things happening within this population, and I think this session today points to that and to the courage of those who look to rehabilitation as, in fact, an accomplishment that can be achieved. How did we get here? I think everyone knows that it's really art that really causes these large populations of older adults to occur. Yes, there are new infections occurring in the over 50 population, but in fact, it's a small number compared to a larger number who live with HIV over 50. Where are we going? I'm trying to give you an idea of where we're going. This is data, recent data from people living with HIV in my hometown, New York City. There are approximately 120,000 people in New York City living with HIV. And this line, if you will, the red line, shows you the increase in the number of people living with HIV over 50. And you don't have to be a statistician. This is not anything fancy, but it increases every single year by about 2%, and in fact, it's beginning to accelerate. So that today, the approximate number of people living with HIV over age 50 in New York City is 46%. There are other cities in the U.S. like San Francisco, Madison, Wisconsin, don't ask why, Chicago, where that number is actually already at 50%. If we look at the percent of all people living with HIV in the U.S. by age group, which we typically don't do, we always took advantage of that 50-plus group to give us better numbers. But if you look at these numbers from 2008, 9, and 10, it's interesting to see that the numbers increase in every single age group at 50 and above. Okay, blue, red, green, right? There's an increase in every single one of those categories, and a decrease in every single other one, except the 45 to 49, which is kind of like a holding pattern. It's about the same. So we'll have relevance as I move forward. If we look at the percent of people with HIV in the U.S. by age group, I don't know if you can see the percentages, but this is as of 2010 by our CDC epidemiology group. In 2010, the number was 35.20, okay, the bar to your far right. The 45 to 49-year-old group, the next bar over, is 19.7%. That group will age across age 50 within the next 5 years. So we're going to add that, if you look at the top equation, to the 35.2, and we have 54.9% as a predictor of where we will be at in the U.S. in regards to the aging population. In fact, the CDC predicts that by 2015 we'll be at 50% at least. These numbers say we'll be actually higher. What's happening is that these curves are beginning to accelerate. The number of people who die and the number of new infections do not affect this at all, because there are actually not as many people dying as there are new infections. So this is really a pretty good model. If we add in the people between 40 and 44, the second equation, you can see that by 2020, not 15, the number will be 70.9%. Now, I don't know about you, but when I hear a number of 70%, I have to stop, look, and listen as a numbers person. This is a profound, profound change in the epidemic. And I'm sure the parallels happen here in Canada and in other Western countries. In Africa, where there are approximately 30 million people living with HIV, the best estimates are that there are already 4 million people living with HIV above age 50. And as AHRRC is expanded to the entire population infected with HIV, that number too will increase every single year. It's interesting, we petitioned the UNAIDS. UNAIDS stops counting at 49, by the way, for reasons that are baffling to me, but we managed actually with a letter that some people in this room may sign to now petition them to increase that bracket. I'm not going to talk too much about this, except to watch in this chart that they increase now over the age of 50. This was not seen until about 2005 in our demographics. This is the HIV care cascade, which I've discussed with people here that are visiting and is a common part of our discussion in the U.S. This is the number of people infected with HIV, 100%, and the number on the far right are the number of people who achieve viral suppression, 25%. This is dismal. This is not good, and why this happens is up for grabs on many levels, but I'm showing it to suggest that the challenge of getting people to be adherent and sustaining them in care is not yet achieved, at least in the U.S. So that when I hear about rehabilitation and getting people back to work and functionality, I'm like, gee, that's really great, but I got to get here first. I've got to get viral suppression. Particularly when prevention issues have been relegated to test, treat. DEBIs, if you will, or targeted preventions have been largely abandoned. I'm going to skip this slide here. Also, the data, which increases almost monthly in the U.S., shows that the sooner you treat, so that if you are 30 years old and you have a viral load of 800, before we might equivocate about whether to treat or not, the sooner you treat, the better the outcome will be as a person ages. So the survival rates increase the sooner you treat, and we already know that the incidence of comorbid conditions decrease. Can't avoid them, but they're nonetheless, early treatment is preferred. We talked about the cascade. I just want to show you the number of hospitalizations. This is in a large sample over the last 5 years, and if you look at the bottom line, the over 50 group is showing increased number of hospitalizations. Hospitalizations are a good indicator, but they also tell us where money is going, because they're costly within any healthcare system. I want to remind you also that the comorbidities identified in this group are many, from cardiovascular to kidney failure, and as well as frailty, which we heard a lot about yesterday, as well as immune system decline. And what's not typically added in this group is mental health and substance use. They are, of course, comorbidities. I'm going to show you what we find, this is kind of new data which we just finished and now in press, about what we have found in this older adult group as regards to services. If you look at the column that's in green, you'll see that a very large majority don't think there are services available. They don't know where to go. They don't want to wait online. They're unable to afford services. They are unable to receive free services because they think they're not qualifying. And the process of achieving those services are confusing and difficult. Well, here's a group of people, older adults with HIV, that we want to mainstream into the larger society and look at the barriers that they tell us about. Similarly, we look at service provider barriers. Service providers don't like us, stigma, I'm afraid I won't receive treatment, the right kind, staff doesn't speak my language, I have trouble expressing myself, and staff are unhelpful or unmotivated. When we ask them, what do you need most? What do you need most? This is just an open question, and this is about 400 folks from New York and Chicago in the U.S. You can see here the answers, and I want to point you to the number one at the bottom, socialization. Socialization. We hear it over and over and over again. The fourth one down is finding a job, which accounts for just about 25% of this population. So, rehabilitation in the U.S. To be frank, as I said before, we don't see any effort to achieve this. There are a couple of agencies that have put people back to work, among them Housing Works, but at extraordinary cost. Extraordinary cost. And if we just think about not just going back to work, but we don't have physiotherapists in the U.S. We don't have people who intervene on behalf of the client to even just get them functional. So when I say rehabilitation doesn't occur, it really doesn't. Also, we don't have a single-payer medical system. 85% of all people living with HIV are Medicaid dependent. Medicaid is dependent upon the federal government, but also state governments. And if you are on Medicaid and you're on the benefits that flow from that, if you work, you will lose them. And this creates enormous fear and as you mentioned yesterday, an unknown that this population is really afraid of. And then there's a reality. 15, 20 years on average in this population of older adults have not been gainfully employed full time. This is an enormous lift, an enormous lift. The good thing is that the Obamacare, if you will, ACA is coming. There are many navigator positions in it that might be appropriate for peers, because we know peer-peer is really very powerful. And I might suggest that part-time work or some kind of work is really needed in this population. But how to achieve it in the U.S., I think I'm going to be looking to you folks to help with that. One last word. We've just begun in the U.S. because of Obamacare, the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute. And I've heard word here in Canada and as well as in the UK that is already in that domain. And we're just beginning it. There's about $500 million that are going to flow into this research in the next few years. And I think it's a significant change, and again reflects why our medical system is so bad and why yours is so much better. I want to thank you for this opportunity, and I want to thank you for actually enlightening me. Thank you.